All right. Salutations. I've been thinking about this and I wanted to share. It's about the brain. You see, it is said to anyone that is honest that we have, in fact, two brains. The conventional brain that everybody worships in science, pretty much, which, in my opinion, is just analyzing what the sensors pick up: the eyes, the ears, the taste, etc. And then there's a brain that is even more important, the gut line. The gut line is been discovered that it possesses more neural pathways than the brain itself. So it is a second brain. And if the gut line is healthy, it will manifest in your mood, for instance. Yeah. If you are sick in the gut line, you won't be able to move. It is the gut that actually commands us. Although it is the heart, you see, that decides, right? It is the heart that decides, but it's the gut that gives you the intuition. You have a gut feeling, right? It is still used in common language, this power of the gut. So you kind of have to imagine how the world was once upon a time before modern ways of controlling birth rates. Yeah, people just got together very early on, sometimes encouraged by their parents, so they could leave the house, and find a job and etc. And obviously they would have lots of children. And you can see in old pictures. Luckily, we still have these proofs that children would grow up a lot faster. Yeah, people with 16 would pass easily for a 30-year-old. Lots of young people around 16 was actually cheating their way into the army and other institutions because they were like 30 already. They had a square jaw, deep voice, and they were tough on they were tough. So it was easily um, families was easily built once upon a time. There's been in these past decades um, a delay in the growth, and I think it has to do with the things we consume and the way we are treated. For 100 years ago, parents would quickly discipline their children with the back of their hands or with a whip or with a belt. You see, parents were strict. There was no room for my truth, your truth, my subjective opinions are trumping objective reality. There was nothing like that. Everybody followed the natural order of things and the hierarchy. And if you dared, get out of the line, they would immediately educate you with the back of the hands or with a belt. And it's what's missing nowadays. So there's been a childification, of the humans. And of course, it's for the purpose of, evil purposes. Obviously, they want to dominate and control people. So let's, sorry about the tangent. Let's go back to the second and most important part of the body, the brain of the gut line. You see, it communicates to us, and we kind of unconsciously follow these hints, these suggestions, because we like to eat, right? We need to eat. You can go without food for a long time, not water, but water is food. So I don't distinguish between liquid and solid. To me, it's all the same thing. So, in fact, our digestion is everything's turned to a liquid. It starts in the mouth, stomach, and once it reaches the thin intestine, everything is watery. Yeah, is watery. Everything is turned into water and then absorbed by the body as water, and it goes to the bloodstream and distributed accordingly. Everything turns into liquid, and then it lays in the large intestines like sediments at the bottom of the ocean. It starts accumulating, and then it becomes dung. Yeah, it becomes semi-solid. All right. I think it is this gut line that unconsciously drives us. It wants something out of us, and we'll do, incredible things to please our second brain, the stomach. It has an voracious appetite because everything in this world requires nourishment, requires food. And don't give me those bullshit, beliefs like the vegans that, oh, you could be vegan. You are just doing harm to yourself. It's brain rotting, degenerative, bullshit. And don't also give me the bullshit that, oh, I'm sorry for the tangent, but oh, the philosophers of the past, they went vegan. They went vegan temporarily. Once upon a time, when you had too much iron in the blood from eating too much meat, you would use leeches, you would bleed yourself, or you would go vegan to lower iron. Because when you have too much iron, which is present in meat, too much iron is poison. So philosophers went vegan temporarily, but they didn't quit meat. Are you kidding me? It's just ridiculous. There was a famous philosopher. He went vegan for some years, and he said, if I want to continue, having apprentices and following the path, I have to eat meat again. Otherwise, I will perish prematurely. So he sensed immediately that his faculties was slowing down. He was becoming slow physically and mentally, and he couldn't, teach discipline anymore. So he returned to meet, logically. So anyway, sorry for the other tangent. Um, I was listening to this documentary a while back. I think it was on television, might have been in the internet. It was like 20 plus years ago. I don't know. It was about this family. They lived in the Himalayas, in the very desertic, cold Himalayas. There was no tree, no bush around. There was just these small cows they call yaks, pretty much was the bread and butter of their daily lives. And they traded in what they could to warm the house and to cook their meals. They used dried cow dung. They collected the dung, dried it up, and used it as kindle because there was nothing else. These people lived in extreme poverty, and they had one, two, three, four, five kids. I don't know exactly right now. And like every other parent that is responsible, they try to find a fate to their children, because children, obviously, up until, I don't know, 30, 40, this is when they gather enough people, gather enough wisdom to know about the world. So if they have some guidance from their parents, the best. Because every parent that tries to guide their children is just avoiding criminals, that they become criminals. Yeah. So I remember that one child, for instance, married to another family, probably the girls. They marry some of their children to other families. I remember that one of them went to the city to live with a distant relative who didn't have children, so they could take care of them. So, and then there's the one that's going to stay behind. That's going to inherit the house, and in return, they're going to take care of the old age parents, take care of their needs, and etc. in their old age. And as a price, they would inherit the house, maybe get married, and continue the cycle. And then there was one of them. They were like, we don't know what to do with this one, so let's put them in the monastery, right? If there was any room left, they would put also people in the monastery, not because the child wanted, or because the child, felt attracted to the philosophy or the lifestyle. No, They had no choice in the matter. The family decided and they went. You eventually learn to like that lifestyle, similar to marriage. You eventually learn to like and enjoy and love your partner. You know, marriage has always been a good deal, and it is the parents that chose accordingly. It was, if you let children choose out of their own will, out of the whims and desires and fantasies, that's when population collapses, you see. That's when the riches, the wealth of the family is not passed from generation to generation. Because if you divorce, you are splitting things in half constantly and destroying family health. If people nowadays have difficulty, for instance, getting a house, it's because family wealth didn't pass from generation to generation. It was divided somewhere along the line. And economy keeps moving, the people who know how to stick with their guns, they are have no problem with what's going on, and a lot get left behind, and they feel uh, attacked, or they feel damaged, obviously, because your parents didn't or failed to pass wealth. Anyway, it's so complicated around these parts regarding those inheritance questions. Anyway, the only place I actually, sorry about the tangent again, it was Switzerland. They had a court specifically for that. Everything was made immediately. Around here, it takes generations, literally generations, to decide the heritage. So let's go back. So it is the stomach, the second brain, the most important brain, that actually guides us. And when parents decide you're going to do this, you're going to do that, they are trying to find a way of living, a way of surviving for their children, right? For instance, the mothers will teach their daughters how to be a mother and a wife. Very important, because that's a job they only them know how to do. The other job of the husband is to fend for resources to feed the body. So often the husbands would have a trade, or they had a skill, you know in or in some area, and they would try to pass these skills to their boys. Immediately after the age of 8 or 10 is when we become sort of independent. We develop critical thinking and etc. around that age. So it's normal that people started working around that age, or between 8 and 10. My neighbor just got retired. He's not 60 yet, but because he started working at 12, he already had enough years. So he's retired before his 60s, because in his time people started early. It's not like nowadays. People are 20 plus years or 30 sometimes, because they jump from area to area, getting more diplomas, getting more studies, and they don't work. I know this person, for instance, that made, studies, and then after you finished your studies, you have to do, other things in order to be able, it's complicated. And they only started working around 30. And I was like, yeah, seriously? And they said, yeah, I'm going to have to work until I'm 70 because I started, late. So anyway, sorry about the tangent. I'm sorry, this is taking too long. It's already 14 minutes. It is this need to feed the stomach that makes people choose a path. Once upon a time, when families was gigantic, before the usage of all of these pills and techniques and contraceptions, families was the minimum five, 5 kids. If you started at 14, you had you were healthy, young enough, you had good structure. If you had good structure and good food, you would have easily 5 children, you know. Obviously, if you didn't have a, good bone structure, and what led to complications in pregnancy, sorry about the tangent, is the malformation of the hips. When growing up, if you women don't eat enough of vitamin A, B, C, and D, development is not going to be the best, and then the head of the baby is not going to be able to pass through the hips. That's when complications happened. And during pregnancy, obviously, if you didn't eat, any tradition out there knew that a pregnant woman would have access to the best foods available so that she would have enough vitamins to allow elasticity of the tissues and the growth of healthy growth of the baby. If you want to have a healthy society, you have to get all the resources towards the future mothers while they are pregnant. If the ones who were more rigorous, they would even start these ceremonies and rituals before pregnancy. For the husband and the wife would eat, cod liver oil, liver, and other foods that were highly concentrated in nutrients and minerals. Seafood, for instance. If you didn't have seafood, you would go for the testicles, and the other organs of meat organs of the animals before pregnancy, so you would have healthy sperm. A lot of people don't think about sperm, but sperm depends on what you eat. Good quality sperm, you have to eat good quality food. The egg, on the other hand, is the same because women are born with the exact number of eggs. None of them is going to be changed or born anew. So but still they can be damaged, and if they are damaged, then it's game over. Sperm, on the other hand, you can produce it. It's a thing that is produced again. That's why men are able to have kids until the age of 70 or 80. There's cases, I mean, Charlie Chaplin, he had babies at the age of 70. Anyway, where was I go on tangents. So if you think about it, when you saw armies similar to what's going on today, you see a bunch of army age people just passing through the frontiers. You see them because they are seeking what opportunities. They don't have a wife, they don't have a way of living. So imagine once upon a time, but 100 times, forward, because people had more children back then. So obviously there was going to be some parents who couldn't find a way of living for their kids, and they had no other choice but to become indentured servants or hop on a ship and try their luck elsewhere. Most of them became criminals. They would join gangs, they would join armies. Whenever there was an army campaigning trying to find, they would go into lost kids, orphanages, and seduce, lost people in order to join the armies. And they joined not because they believed in the religion or in the cause or whatever, but they offered them food. Again, it is the stomach, the lining that chooses for you. Yeah, people in monasteries, people that go into institutions, not necessarily because they believe them. No, it's because it gives them a roof, it gives them food, power, and influence. Even the rich, they forced their own to almost like infiltrate the clergy, infiltrate religion, infiltrate everything. One day they might need a favor, and they had someone representing them there. See, people, they were families would force their own to go and occupy these places, and you shut up and do it. If you say the world is subjective and do whatever you want, follow your heart, follow your dreams, this romanticized version of reality, it's just going to lead to the end of civilization. So when you had armies marching, it was just men because they had no family, no job, and they just marched, pillaged, raped, and not because they liked the religion or the flag that they were under. They couldn't care less. They just had to feed the stomach. People will do crazy things, even eating their own, in order to satisfy the stomach. The stomach is extremely powerful. It controls you. Yeah, it controls you in ways that you wouldn't, believe. A lot of what we do is our stomach actually guiding us. So, but then again, it is the heart that commands everything. Hmm? If you only listen to the stomach, then you become like an animal, an irrational animal. The heart is the one, it's the seat, it's the throne, right? It's the king. You have to listen to the heart. The brain is the same thing. You mustn't not listen to the brain. No, you listen to the one who's sitting in the throne. Because if you only listen to the brain, you become like one of these mathematicians, or, one of these atheists. Everything is just material and, extremely, only the things that you can touch, measure, and count is the only things that exist in the world. And they are extremely intelligent, it's true, in the sense that they can memorize a shitload of information. There's like 12 different types of intelligence. This is not recognized by science, but they only focus in one, which is memorization. They might have a second type of intelligence that they focus, which is following orders, but they mainly concern about memorization, which has become pretty much useless nowadays because of computers, AI, the internet. You don't need to memorize useless information anymore. So there's a revolution on the horizon. Now they probably only focus on blindly following orders, and this is when we go to a theocratic type of society. I think the world is shifting. It's going to become a scientific theocratic society. That's what we are heading. You know, they just want you to follow orders. And the god of this theocracy is AI, right? And you're just another cog in the machine. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I've been talking for 23 minutes. Um, I hope this makes any sense, and tell me what you guys think, and have a nice day.